first go to what Secretary of State John Kerry said yesterday regarding the Ukraine. You just heard Chad Groening hosting American Family News, onenewsnow.com, bringing you the latest, as Chad always does. Bravo. He works alongside a frequent guest on this program, Woodward's Beat the Press. No, that's the name of the segment. He's the real Chris Woodward. Yeah. He's not imitating. And he's not hating. I'll actually post our interview from Friday up on the Facebook. Go to the Facebook and learn about the Brady Bunch. Did you hear about the Brady Bunch? Yeah, I actually found a lesson in diplomacy there. Crane, what do you mean? You're talking so many references, I can't keep up. Yes, you can. You're the smartest audience in radio. I know you can. I'm going to keep moving. You'll catch it, and I'll fill in the background as I go, because I've got some gems for you. What about the case of the Mondays? Oh, I have it. I have a cure for the case of the Mondays. So David Garnstein-Ross starts next hour talking about the Ukraine, where I'll ask him about what Secretary John Kerry said yesterday on This Week with George Stephanopoulos regarding the Russians invading the Ukraine. Oh, they're really not, but they are. They were invited, but they really weren't. Roll it.
Well, we hope not. We hope it's not going to be a disaster. What has already happened is a brazen act of aggression in violation of international law, in violation of the UN Charter, in violation of the Helsinki Final Act, in violation of the 1997 Ukraine-Russia basing agreement. Russia has engaged in a military act of aggression against another country. And it has huge risks, George. It's a 19th century act in the 21st century that really puts at question Russia's capacity to be within the G8.
All those violations, sir, so what's the penalty for what Russia has already done?
Well, we're busy right now coordinating with our counterparts in many parts of the world. Yesterday, the President of the United States had an hour-and-a-half conversation with President Putin. He pointed out, importantly, that we don't want this to be a larger confrontation. We are not looking for a U.S.-Russia East-West redux here. What we want is for Russia to work with us, with Ukraine.
Now, there's a wonderful part two to that I'll get to with David Garnstein-Ross, because it really shows how John Kerry and those oftentimes, even though President Obama contradicts John Kerry, a few times I can point that out. Are you going to talk about Bibi Netanyahu and the meeting? And yeah, I will get to that with David Garnstein-Ross. Right now, I'm going to put the focus right on what we are experiencing right now, which is a dose of reality, unfortunately, coming from Vladimir Putin. And this is a general overall lesson of how we deal with foreign policy. Those of us who advocate for a strong foreign policy and, like me, supported the invasion of Iraq, supported the movement and invasion in Afghanistan, did so because we actually don't like war. We don't like drawn-out war. But there are those that believe war is the enemy or nuclear weapons are the enemy. I say the enemy is the enemy. The enemy manifests himself in human forms like brutal dictators like Pooty Poot himself. That's right. Remember what President Bush used to call him? Pooty Poot? Hey, Pooty Poot. Yeah, they're killers. They're dictators. They desire more power, and they have very inflated views of themselves and what they are to the world and their country, and their goals are to expand their power. Now, I read probably the most disturbing article I've read in a long time. What, are you reading like Rosie O'Donnell's opinions on world peace, or are you reading what the mainstream media said about the people that supported SB 1062? No. I don't read Rosie O'Donnell, and I gave you a large dose of SB 1062 last week, and actually I put it up on the Facebook as well about Tony Kornheiser. Yeah. Nazi comparisons and the whole thing. I love the fact that, side note, on that, I always have somebody go, where do they say this? And then I post, oh, here, here. here, here. But I don't have time to do that all the time. Just trust me. If I say it, I can back it up. That's what you've got to do. Just ask Buddy Hinton. Ooh, the Brady Bunch lesson. I'm referring back to that. Back to the article I was reading and have read for today. It is the Eurasianist threat. Robert Zubrin. Just an amazing article and quite scary because it outlines what President Putin's ideas are for the future. And it is, I don't want to say frightening because we shouldn't be frightened. Our faith is not of the world, but in Christ. But it is scary. It's scary stuff. I'm going to ask David about this as well. That all said, you remember this when President Obama said to then President Medvedev, hey, tell Vlad it's my last election. After the election, I could be a lot more flexible. I'll transmit that message, said Medvedev. And then Mitt Romney was mocked for his comments about Russia and being a geopolitical threat, as well as Sarah Palin being laughed at. Well, just take a listen at this clip, and then I'll fill in the blanks. Roll it.
This is my last election for you. Yeah, after my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah, I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir and Alexander.
Attacking me is not an agenda. Attacking me is not talking about how we're going to deal with the challenges that exist in the Middle East and take advantage of the opportunity there and stem the tide of this violence. But I'll respond to a couple of things you mentioned. First of all, Russia, I indicated, is a geopolitical foe. Not a, excuse me, it's a geopolitical foe. And I said in the same paragraph, I said, and Iran is the greatest national security threat we face. Russia does continue to battle us in the UN time and time again. I have clear eyes on this. I'm not going to wear rose-colored glasses when it comes to Russia or Mr. Putin. And I'm certainly not going to say to him, I'll give you more flexibility after the election. After the election, he'll get more backbone. Number two, with regards to Iraq, you and I agreed, I believe, that there should have been a status of forces agreement.
And you failed because you wouldn't semantically change our forces to diplomatic forces. But I digress because you tried to lie about that, or people tried to cover it. And even people that are very well informed, it's not about a conservative liberal thing. They just, I don't know. I think sometimes when you criticize somebody so much that people are afraid of being called biased or over the top, or call somebody a liar so much, you get, oh, you're just a right-winger. You know, I'm just speaking the truth. President Obama knowingly misleads people. He's done it a few times. We've documented it. They're pretty big issues. Benghazi, dead Americans, IRS, people being persecuted for their political beliefs, trying to shut down speech, in essence. They're fast and furious. Eric Holder. I mean, come on. What was that voice? Oh, that was my Chris Matthews. Oh, come on. Actually, I should do it like this. Oh, come on. I'm making you believe it. Because that's how he sounded the other day, a while back, actually, when Mitt Romney made those comments and made comments to criticize President Obama for making the statement he did to Dmitry Medvedev in 2012. And this was before the election. So Chris Matthews mocked Mitt Romney for his statements on Russia. And here is Chris Matthews of MSNBC. This is important. I'll explain. Roll it.
Here it is. Here's Romney yesterday on CNN trying to capitalize on the president's remarks. Let's watch.
If he's planning on doing more and suggest to Russia that he has things he's willing to do with them, he's not willing to tell the American people. This is to Russia. This is, without question, our number one geopolitical foe. They fight every cause for the world's worst actors.
Cynthia, I don't know what decade this guy's living. It sounds like, if not 72, 52 even. It's not Stalin over there. It's not Khrushchev. It's not Brezhnev.
It's not the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Medvedev,
no.
Chatting with him as another country in the world that's no longer the Soviet Union. Is he trying to play Ronald Reagan here or what? What's he up to?
You know, this is Mitt Romney's severely conservative problem. He struggles so hard to be persuasive, to make a case against Obama, that he always ends up jumping the shark, saying something that is completely off key and not credible.
It is interesting how ridiculous those people look now. They sound just as ridiculous as the people that were supporting Obamacare. And that's a reality. Now, some people, I recognize when you hear that message, you may have supported Obamacare, and I believe you supported the idea of Obamacare, just like I believe you support the idea of world peace. And you want to get to world peace. But you realize peace is not what North Korea has, right? Because it's pretty peaceful in North Korea. They're shrinking. It's peaceful, but land of liberty, free people, no. In Iran, it's fairly peaceful, but they hang homosexuals. So I don't think you're digging peace and world peace and peace, love, dope in that sense, because you realize what those 60s radicals, oftentimes the hippie movement, was about, was a false reality or advancing a false reality because they didn't recognize human nature and evil. And now you're probably coming around to the fact that the only way to really make sure that we don't have aggression from evil dictators is we show strength, because weakness invites aggression. And you probably realize that just because somebody gets like 98% of the vote doesn't mean they're the most popular. It probably means there's one candidate, if you don't vote for him, your family's going to end up in a gulag. You're probably waking up to the reality, the cold, harsh reality, that yes, there was a domino effect, and the Red Chinese and the Russians were supporting North Koreans. But I digress. Maybe you should read a book by my good friend, Phil Jennings, Politically Incorrect Guide to the Vietnam War. I've got a lot more education on this issue, the Ukraine, next. AFR Talk.